Hi, first of all, I'm gonna be showing you guys the application structure flow. What we did was create a really basic application. It's just a web page, but the idea was to just prove a concept, right? So using this web page, we are being connected to our peer server using the Hyperledger Fabric SDK. In this case, we are using the JavaScript API. And with this API, we send the request to our peer. And in the peer, is going to be getting into a consensus with another peers, validating against the chain code smart contract. This smart contract is going to be defining all the different rules of what this peer can do based on the certificates it presents. And once it's validated is when we gonna be making the or saving that information into the database. So just to notice here or to remember here, the application can be any kind of application we can develop. It can be a mobile application, can be an ERP, IoT, or GPRS system. The important thing is that this opens a lot of possibilities, so we can do a lot of different things with this. As mentioned, this is a really basic application. It's just a web page, and what we are doing here is making sure that some concepts were defined. So for example, we're able to query all the values that are really in the database or in the chain. Something really important is that I just include this data or these values manually, and when I create the original database. But we can change the kind of values, the content, or whatever, in order to adjust it to your needs. In this case, we also are able to include hyperlinks to different situations. So, for example, in this case, we are including a location for the asset, and we are linking this to a Google Maps location. So, in this case, this cargo is in Puerto Caldera, Costa Rica, and so that's what we are doing right now. We also are able to make a query based on the ID, or we can use any other particular value. So in this case, we're using the ID. Here you can see the results for that particular ID. And moreover, we are able to create new values, new records. So for example, I'm going to create a new record with tests on that, on all the fields. So when I click create, right now what is going to be happening is that my application or this web page is going to be connecting to the JavaScript SDK, sending this data with a particular certificate to my peer server. My peer server is going to validate against the smart contract, and if the transaction and the certificates are valid, then it's the data is going to be recorded. So for example, I just click on create, and now we have the transaction ID. Something important here is, for example, then in the Hyperlogic Explorer we have installed in our server as well, we're able to see all the different blocks that are being created. And for example, in this last block, block 6, we can see this transaction ID, which is the same transaction we just received here, 2A, 2A, just to make sure. Yeah, there we go. And with the transaction, we are able to see details on this transaction, as I mentioned. We have the transaction is an endorser type transaction, is sending to my channel, which is the main channel we create for this peer. And we can see some more details, like all the different data we're sending, the certificates we're sending for this transaction, and moreover, we are also able to see the values we're sending in the transaction right here. And all this is being stored in the new block we create. I can create this, for example, we can also make changes. So for example, in this case, we have the ID ADA, just to be sure that what I did works, this is the one we just create, this value here. So in the ADA, I'm going to change that name to Barry. Right now, the owner is test, and now I am making and sending a new request. A new transaction was generated, and we have a new result, which is a success result, and we can query directly the value based on the ID we have. We have the timestamp test, and now the holder is Barry. We can change that as well here, the query. Here we have it. And as I mentioned it, all these values, all the application can be any kind of application, or an ERP, an IoT. Even we can create a script that connects to an FTP platform and retrieve a file. So following that example, we are being able to load files like here. So we just create a simple script in order to load files. These are XML, to load XMLs. Right now we are creating the ID manually, so we can remember something easy. But in the practice, we should create our own ID system for SailAway. So what I'm gonna be using is NiHole1. If you see, all these values are being retrieved directly from this XML file. So that's what we are doing right now. We can include the PO number. For example, in this case, it's not included in the XML file, but we can include, I don't know, we're just gonna be writing test there. We have the serial number, the visible JAS. We can include something else. I'm just gonna put test as well for the visible name. The location, you see we're retrieving the location New York, United States. The timestamp, this is something really important. We're retrieving the timestamp based on the file, but at the end we can create our own timestamp solution that can be dynamically generated when the file is retrieved or when the user input their information. And I'm gonna put as holder my own name, and I'm gonna click on create, and the same process was happening. We had just retrieved the success. My application connects using the SDK to the peer and validates against the smart contract, and once the smart contract is valid, it put the value in the database or the ledger, and it retrieves and returns the success number and the success transaction. So we can go back to our application page, and we can query that, and we have NiHole1 with the data we just include. Something important is that here I'm just showing the data we want to retrieve, but we are saving all the data for SailAway. And as well, the location works. Since it's coming from New York, we just click that, and it sends us to a Google Map location to where exactly it's that vessel or that cargo. And well, basically, this is what it does. It's just a simple representation of the whole application structure flow, and how this clarifies what we're doing. Moreover, the important part in the whole IP ledger structure is what is happening in the backend. So remember that this is a distributed network with a lot of peers. So before every data is going to be validated against the smart contract, every transaction, and this smart contract and this validation is happening not in just one peer, it's happening in several peers around the world. So once all the peers gets into a consensus is when we are allowed to record the data in the database. So basically, this is what we do, and thanks a lot.